Welcome to the Intro to Paddling Tidewater course, presented by Paddle Trails Canoe Club. This course consists of 5 short videos covering various topics, which, in combination with our on-the-water Intro to Tidewater class, will make you a safer and more knowledgeable paddler. In this first part, we'll discuss essential gear and information to have for your paddling trip on tidal water. Then, we'll go over what tides are and how they work. We'll also cover how to find tide tables online and how to estimate tidal heights and times using the rule of twelfths. All paddling trips, of course, require a reliable boat, a paddle, and a PFD. When paddling on cold water, it's important to be prepared for the worst-case scenario. In other words, dress for the swim, not the air temperature. Water temperatures in Puget Sound range from the mid-40s in winter to the high 50s in summer. If you capsize, swimming in cold water can quickly lead to cold shock, impaired motor function, and hypothermia, even if the air temperature feels mild. Wearing a dry suit or a wetsuit provides essential protection against cold water by slowing heat loss and reducing the risk of hypothermia if you end up in the water. Even with a dry suit or wetsuit, it's a good idea to have a dry bag with a full set of warm dry clothes for each paddler. In addition, you should also bring rain or cold weather gear, which can greatly increase your comfort should the weather change for the worse. Every boat should carry a spare paddle. If you lose your paddle in a current, it can be very difficult to recover. We also strongly recommend flotation bags to help keep your boat afloat if you capsize. Always wear your PFD. If it's not on you when you need it, it's not going to help. Canoes should have ropes, also called painters, at each end. A good rule of thumb is to have ropes as long as the length of your boat. They make it easier to grab onto and control your boat if it gets away from you. Kayaks should also have grab handles and perimeter lines around the deck to give a swimmer something to hold onto. If you're going to be paddling in wavy conditions, you should also have a spray skirt for your kayak to keep water out of the cockpit. It's also a good idea to bring a bilge pump or a bailing scoop to get water out of your boat. A repurposed bleach bottle works well for this. Just cut off the bottom, keep the cap on the top, and you've got a great scoop. A compass is important if you're paddling in open water, as fog or rain can make it hard to tell where you are. Bring along food and plenty of water. Also, protect yourself from the sun with sunglasses, a brimmed hat, and sunscreen. A dry bag or case that you can tether to your boat is important to keep your valuables safe and dry. Gear is important, but so is information. Before embarking on your trip, make sure you've checked the most recent weather forecast, especially wind direction and speed. Check on tide times and heights for the day and location, and figure out which direction the current will be going during your paddle. Bring a map of your route, either printed or as a screenshot on your phone. Remember, you might not have good cell service, so don't count on being able to load maps on your phone while on the water. It's also helpful to mark potential pullout spots for breaks or for emergencies. Let's talk about tides. Tides are caused by the gravitational pull on ocean water by the moon and sun. This creates a bulge of water on the side of the Earth facing the moon and the sun, and at the same time, another bulge on the opposite side of the Earth due to inertia. As the Earth rotates, different areas move through these tidal bulges, giving us 2 high tides and 2 low tides each day. The moon has a greater influence on tides since it's so much closer to the Earth than the sun. When the sun, moon, and Earth are aligned, during full and new moons, the combined gravitational force creates higher high tides and lower low tides. When the sun and moon are not aligned, they partially cancel each other out, resulting in smaller tidal differences. Rules of thumb for tides in the Pacific Northwest. We have asymmetric tides. This means that each day we have a high high tide, a low high tide, a high low tide, and a low low tide. The timing between high and low tides is typically around 6 hours, but can be a little shorter or longer. On average, each day's tide will be about 50 minutes later than the previous day. The tidal range, meaning the difference between high and low tides, can be just a few feet or up to 16 feet, which can result in strong currents. As the tide rises in the ocean, water sweeps into the Puget Sound and then into tidal rivers and estuaries. It takes some time to do this, so a high tide will be later the farther you get from the ocean. For instance, let's say today's first high tide in Port Townsend is at 9 a.m. The high tide in Seattle will be about an hour later, and in Tacoma, later still. At Nisqually Reach, near the bottom of the Puget Sound, high tide will be almost 2 hours after high tide in Port Townsend. Tidal marshes and estuaries are fun to explore, but it's very important to know when, and by how much, the tide will be going out. You don't want to get stranded. Generally, you want at least 18 inches of water depth in order to paddle. There are several ways to find a tide table. Firstly, you can try typing in the location, along with the phrase tide table, and you'll likely be directed to the table you're looking for. Or, you can use a dedicated site, like U.S. Harbors, NOAA, or WillyWeather. Once you have your tide table, you can see a graphic chart of high and low tides, plus a table showing times and tidal levels. Most sites allow you to hover your cursor over the line on the chart to see detailed information for any time between high and low tide. But if you don't have that option, and you only have the times and water depths of high and low tides, you can use the rule of twelfths to calculate the tidal level at any time in between. The tide doesn't move evenly, it starts slow, speeds up in the middle, and slows again at the end. Let's choose this day from our table. We want to figure out the tide height at 11:25 a.m. First, we need to figure out what the full tidal range is, or how much the water level is going to change between high tide at 7:25 a.m. and low tide at 1:25 p.m. That's easy, we'll just subtract 2 feet from 14 feet, which is 12 feet. The time between high tide and low tide is exactly 6 hours in this example. If it's shorter or longer for the day you're paddling, just divide however long it is by 6. During the first hour, the tide drops 1/12 of the total range, or 1 foot. So, at 8:25 a.m., the tide is at 13 feet. During the second hour, the tide drops more quickly, moving 2/12 of the total range, or 2 feet. At 9:25 a.m., the tide is at 11 feet. During the third hour, the tide drops even faster, 3/12 of the total range, or 3 feet. At 10:25 a.m., the tide is at 8 feet. During the fourth hour, the tide again drops 3/12 of the total range, or 3 feet. So, at 11:25 a.m., the tide is at 5 feet. This is the time we were calculating for, but we'll continue. During the fifth hour, it begins to slow down, dropping 2/12 of the total range, or 2 feet. At 12:25 p.m., the tide is at 3 feet. During the sixth hour, it drops only 1/12 of the total range, or 1 foot, ending at the low tide mark of 2 feet. Even if your tidal ranges and times are not such nice round numbers, with just a little bit of math, you can figure out how much the tide will change, based on the time and tidal heights between high and low tides. Thank you for watching this video. Be sure to watch the other sections of this course, and check out www.paddletrails.org for more information.